this session, we are happy to introduce a terrific topic, games and activities for language learning in OS. Our speakers today are Michael Thomas and Nick Svarts. Michael is a professor of higher education and online learning at the University of Central Lancashire, and Nick is an OpenSimulator developer and runs the company 3DLES. Welcome all, and let's begin the session. I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about a European Union funded project called GUINEVERE. So GUINEVERE stands for Games Used in Engaging Virtual Environments for Real-Time Language Education. It's got 5 main partners.
Sorry, I just got kicked off.
Can you hear me?
It's okay, guys. You can keep talking. They can still hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I think I've been logged out for some reason. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so GUINEVERE project. Yeah, so games used in engaging virtual environments for real-time language education. And we're focused on this 2-year project, which involves 5 partners from across the European Union. And they are from Istanbul, from the UK, from Belgium, and from the Netherlands and Italy. And the main focus of the project is really to look at the use of games in immersive environments. And we look at 3 different platforms, Second Life, Minecraft, and OpenSim. And what we're really interested in relation to this particular presentation is to look at the potential and some of the challenges around collecting data within immersive environments, looking through the lens of all these debates around learning analytics. So learning analytics is defined as an educational application of web analytics aimed at learner profiling, process of gathering and analyzing details of individual student interactions in online learning environments. So the goal, as far as we're concerned, is to try and underline the emphasis on learning. So how can we use data and big data to help us in terms of learning design? So the goal is to build better pedagogies, empower active learning, think about targeting at-risk student populations, and how can we help students to interact in these environments, obviously focused on language learner interaction, leading to second language acquisition, and the use of data for performing their tasks and improving their language proficiency. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Nick, I think, in a second. So looking at the debates around analytics, I think 4 main aspects of analytics really are identified. These are the descriptive focus of analytics. So trying to look at the use of quantitative data in particular to find out what actually happened, diagnostic data, so why did something happen, trying to think about how we can use qualitative data as well. The debates around predictive analytics, so how can we use the data to predict what will happen in the future in terms of learner performance, and more prescriptive approaches in terms of what needs to be done to achieve a specific outcome. And some of the critical perspectives on this, I guess, engage with the idea that analytics can only ever give us a partial understanding of learning that is more behaviorist in orientation. So these are some of the challenges, and I've given you a brief overview of some of these aspects, and we'll come back to this in a later presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Nick, who's going to talk a little bit about how we've been operationalizing this in the OpenSim environment.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Well, we are. Most of you logged out and now are logging back in. So welcome back if you hear us. We are halfway now in our project, and I have to find the right slide. There it is. We are halfway now in our time in the project. We have another year to go, and we prepared and built a lot of things in our grid to be tested and used by teachers from different countries in Europe. So let me show you around a bit. First, we created an orientation island on the GUINEVERE island, in OpenSim, of course. And there, teachers and pupils that are new to virtual worlds can learn the basic things they need to survive in this virtual world. So they learn how to walk, fly, chat, sit, click on things and start videos, etc. All basic skills that are needed to do a quest or a game in our virtual world. So here you see a sign, all the signs with instructions they can follow, like a little gate you see here will open only with a password, and the chair is to learn how to sit on it. Because a lot of people are, for the first time, they really have to learn a lot. And so actually when they're ready with the orientation castle, they can go outside and start their first quest. And you can see there are instructions on the most right board. And on the other board is the first question. If that answers right, a bridge will appear so they can cross a river. So here the quest starts. And the quest we created is just an example for teachers, which shows what is possible in a virtual world. And we all know that not everything is possible, but a lot can be done. So we made many different examples. And here you see the path they are walking all over the island, where they will find clues and questions to answer. On another island, we can also do building sessions with the teachers. We have placed many example games for the teachers to play, but also to get inspired in making their own games, which all can be done on this island, and we will have sessions with that. Maybe more interesting, and then I'll go to the next page, maybe more interesting is that besides the games, we also exploring the way we can get data from the virtual world and from the games that are played. So on the GUINEVERE grid, we collect data of all kinds. But before we can collect this data, the user needs to opt in. If he or she doesn't opt in, we will not collect any data, and we are following the GDPR regulations for this. If a user opts out, he can still go and play in the virtual world. All games will still work, but the data of the user will not be collected. When a user arrives here for the first time, a pop-up will appear where he can select to opt in or opt out, or he can click on the sign you see here and also opt in or opt out. After he opted in, he can choose a language to work with. So here we have a choice to work in Italian, German, French, Dutch, English and Turkish. And the selected language will be stored in our external database, which is on the server. And so now when an avatar has chosen, for instance, English, all the signs in the orientation castle, where they learn all the basic skills, will be in that language, in English. As you can see here, it sees it's a sign how to walk, and it's in English. But it can also be in one of the other languages. The sign automatically changes to the desired language of the avatar that stands closest to the sign. And here you see 4 of the other languages. And that's not all the data we collect. We also want to collect some other data. For instance, we have a small Bartle test, and maybe you know about Bartle. It's about types of game players. And this Bartle test, we want to find out what kind of player the user is. And this test is done on a web page, and the data is also sent to the database. And on the right side, you see a numeric pad that asks to fill in the year you were born. And in the middle, you see a sign, go to your personal page. And if you click that, a web page will open with a small personal dashboard. And here you can find the information we have gathered. And as you can see, I was born in 1960. I prefer to work in English, and the results of the Bartle tests are also there, and also graphically. Other personal information still needs to be implemented. That's something for the coming months to do. Besides the personal information, we can also collect other information like the whereabouts of the users on the islands. And here on the left you see a small list of me where you can see what I've been doing on the 8th of November on the GUINEVERE island. I arrived at the GUINEVERE starting point. I clicked on several things like an armor and a sword, and I sat on some chairs. I walked through a gate and clicked the outside bell. So you can see what activities a user has done on a certain day. And you can even show it on a map. And in the coming months, we will have some discussion and trials with teachers to find out which data we really need and which data is helping the research and which data we don't need. As soon as we have this clear, we will implement this, of course, in our project. I will give over back to Michael again.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Yeah, just to wrap this up then. So we're trying to think about this big debate around analytics, trying to move it back towards how it can be used powerfully in relation to learning and in relation to immersive environments. A lot of analytics at the moment is taking place in kind of, Blackboard, other kind of virtual learning environments. And there's not so much research taking place in immersive environments. So we just want to put it out there and think about some of the challenges that we face in trying to define the way ahead. So to return to that slide at the beginning where I identified, descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, we want to think about what kind of data we need for individual language learners. A lot of our activities are group-based activities, they are collaborative. How can we collect meaningful, rich data to leverage understanding about how learners interact and how this impacts, as we say, on their use of the language as well. So that really focuses on the descriptive aspects of this. In terms of the diagnostic elements, again, what kind of mix of quantitative or qualitative data, either real time or asynchronous, that can help us to provide insights and explain these kind of individual and collaborative game experiences. And is it really worthwhile to think about learning analytics in this context as helping us to understand the predictive potential of analytics as well? Most language educators, I guess, would argue that learning is so complex that we can't reduce it to this behavioristic approach. And there are all kinds of other challenges we face that Nick has touched on as well in relation to ethics, confidentiality, security, teacher accountability, for example, and of course surveillance. So we're trying to think through some of these issues that teachers are engaging with now in the classroom environments, and to a certain extent it's becoming a kind of common sense. But how do we do that in a meaningful way, focused on learning within immersive environments? And my final slide there, slide 19, again on challenges, is a very interesting tweet from the children's author, Michael Rosen, and helps us a little bit to reflect on how learning analytics is being applied in face-to-face classroom contexts and using virtual learning environments. So he's talking about first, they, I guess, policymakers, curriculum developers, teachers, administrators, said that they needed data about children or learners to find out what they're learning. And then they said they needed data about the children to make sure they are learning. And then the children only learned what could be turned into data. And then the children themselves became data. It's a bit of an apocalyptic vision here, but it does tell us a little bit about some of the trends that are affecting this debate and shaping this debate about learning analytics. So in terms of where we are with the project, we're halfway through. We've designed a lot of activities in these different environments, and we really want now to engage with the teacher community out there and the OpenSim community as well, and to think about how best we can operationalize an analytics-based approach in order to further our understanding of second language acquisition within these environments, but also how learners themselves interact. So looking at it, in the sense of a multimodal approach as well. So even learners themselves, when they're not talking in a foreign language, they may still be interacting within the immersive environment. So we need that kind of multimodal approach to understand what is happening. Okay, so I think that wraps it up from us.
Right.
Unless you have anything else further to add there at the end, Nick.
No, I think it's all okay. Yes.
Good. Great. Well, thanks,
gentlemen,
Melissa.
thank you so much. This was fantastic presentation, and I know I learned a lot about learning.
Yeah.
But I was curious. I'm going to open it up to a few questions we have time for on the floor.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask one myself.
Yeah.
For years they've been analyzing learning, and how does the aspect of virtual reality change that?
Michael.
Go ahead, Nick. Well, what we're interested in, I think, is project-based learning. So it's real-world learning where learners are trying to complete authentic tasks. So unlike a classroom environment, the virtual environment allows us to draw on realistic, authentic environments, whatever that is, for example, piloting a plane or flying through a three-dimensional model of a human heart if you were a medical student learning English, for example. So it certainly enriches our authentic learning environments. I think that's probably the main thing. And it also allows us to collaborate in different spaces outside of a kind of inauthentic classroom environment, to draw on the use of props, for example, or other aspects of an environment that can help us to look at the intercultural aspects of second language learning. So we could be learning French, for example, while within a French city or a cafe in Paris or beside the Eiffel Tower. So this adds to the authenticity, I think. That's one particular aspect that we get from the research on virtual environments.
Yeah. And there was a quick question out there asking, which I think we identified in the maybe in the beginning, is do you have to comply with the European privacy laws?
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I think you had a slide on this, didn't you, talking about GDPR?
Yes, we did. And we did a lot of work so that people, when they opt out, then really nothing is stored about this this person. Only, of course, his login and his name. But for the rest, no data will be saved or because of the GDPR appliance.
Okay. And the other question here, there is one about collecting data. What about compliance with HIPAA or FERPA? There are legal issues in the U.S., but do you have to deal
this is
with
a European project, and we work with schools and from our secondary schools and universities in Europe. So we only use the GDPR law thing.
Okay.
But I think they may be comparable with each other. I'm not sure because I never read about the HIPAA and FERPA.
Gotcha. So FERPA is education in the U.S. Yeah. Yeah. So everyone, any other questions? We have probably about 4 minutes here. Right. If someone, what will you do with this data at the end of your study?
What will we do at the end?
Like, will someone? Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, where can we find information about this if we're teachers?
Okay, yeah, you can go to our website, which is on the final slide there, guinevereproject.eu.
Mm-hmm.
And All the information about the project will be on there. All of our deliverables and reports, they'll all be open access and freely available to everybody. But like I say, if you're really interested in the project, we're looking for teachers and teachers with learners, for example, to come into some of our environments and work with us and help us to design these activities and games, and also to have input into, like I say, how we focus on the analytics and think about what kind of data we can collect in a meaningful way. I think that's important. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to have a real-time look, especially for this OpenSim conference, I opened the GUINEVERE grid for hypergrid activities. So you can have a look and jump there yourself and maybe do the quest or do watch some things in the castle. That's no problem. Just for this next coming week, and then we will close it again.
Okay, so you guys heard it. Check it out for the next week. A lot of fun. Well, Michael and Nick, I want to thank you both for joining us today. Very informative.